we all create a wake as we move through our life, right? This series of waves that come out from behind us. So the things that we're thinking, we're feeling, we're saying are impacting those around us. And they're delivering a message to us about where we're going and what's important. So today we want to move into the next installment in your path to purpose. Who's here for the first time? Okay, well, first time. Okay. So, by the way, the questions are going to get tougher as we go along. So, that was the easy one. That's okay. My Spanish is, well, I could ask you where the bathroom is, and I can order. I'm just trying to remember how many I can order. No, I'm trying to remember how many. Like in German, I can order up to 10 beers because I can count to 10. But then if I needed the bathroom, I'd have to ask for it in Spanish, which wouldn't be very helpful in Heidelberg, unless the server happened to be somewhere from South America. Anyway, sorry, blah, blah, blah. So welcome if this is your first installment in this journey we're taking. This is very much about diving into what is your purpose? Why are you alive? What direction are your feet heading in the morning as they come out from under the covers? Do they know where they're headed? Or is the day just going to kind of happen? It's interesting because I have been doing some Be Live interviews with Amy Crawford. I'll be doing another one this afternoon right after this event. And we're going to be talking about, among many things, what's been happening in our markets, the downturn in the energy sector, COVID-19, and the impact that can have on us emotionally. And it's interesting because one of the things that we have when we find ourselves in this circumstance is it's extremely difficult to not be affected by everything that's happening around us. What kind of influence would we have on this advancing virus as individuals? What kind of influence would we have on that, do you suppose?
Almost none.
Yeah. Byron?
I'd say reducing the panic within our
Right. Which logically makes sense, but if I'm feeling that sense of panic, I may be wondering, well, I don't disagree. I think that's a good idea. For the record, Byron comes from an occupational health and safety perspective, so he'd be a good guy to talk to about this. Yes. There's a reason I'm standing up here, Byron. It's about 3 meters, I'm thinking. So knowing what we need to do when we're seeing this virus unfolding around us, as I was saying just before we got started, our Prime Minister and his wife are now in quarantine because she returned from Europe after delivering a talk, and she's developed a fever, and so she's been tested. We'll see what the results of the tests are. But he's quarantined, obviously, because they live in very close proximity. But then you think about this downturn that you were talking about on air, maybe you're working in the energy sector and you're thinking, well, my company, you heard what, was it Cenovus that cut their budget? MEG cut their budget. Suncor's cut its budget. Suncor had in their daycare in their building, we found that there was a little kid in the daycare that has been exposed. I know, has the child tested positive? So then you think, will the Suncor building be empty by Friday? And everyone, who knows, right? And, as Michael said, there's not a lot we can do about that. There's nothing that we personally can do to drive the price of gas or oil up. There's nothing that we personally can do to convince Cenovus to spend $50 million or $500 million more dollars this year, or stop those companies from letting people go. So what actually can we do? Well, I think it's timely that we're talking about purpose, because purpose is something that's part of who we are. As we talked about last week, you're conceived with your purpose. It's part of your DNA. There's no getting away from it, which actually would be ridiculous. Why would you want to? It is the reason why you're alive. So focusing on something we actually can control and actually can help us in this moment where there's a lot of strife and concern and panic going on. I mean, I hope you all have enough toilet paper. That would be, forgive the pun, really shitty to run out of that. Just saying. I know, I had to go there, didn't I? I know. You saw the videos. I did too. Like the door opened and hundreds of people running like they're on a marathon or a 100-meter dash to the toilet paper. Then, where's your nose? I know where my nose is. Where's yours? Kleenex? Oh, anyway. So when we focus on things we can't control and we feel that we are the victim of, all that does is make us, if we're not already feeling tense, it makes us feel worse. It makes us feel less in control. When we focus on things we can control, which is getting grounded in what we're really good at, what we really love to do, and we focus our energy there, now that's a game changer. So Michael and I agreed there's really no influence we're going to have on the advance of COVID-19. There's nothing that we can really do to influence the downturn in the energy sector. We're kind of powerless to do that. And I'm going to argue with that thinking. Because if we focus on that as our reality, of course, we're absolutely right. And therefore, we won't try to do anything. Because why would we try if we know we can't succeed? That would be silly. So we won't. Well, in fact, I happen to know a number of you personally. I know some of your backgrounds. And those of yours that I don't, I'm sure if I looked at them, I would discover there's an awful lot of horsepower between these ears of yours. That the solutions to some of the problems we're facing, probably in some part, are in this room with us right this moment. But if we're focused only on the things we can't do and have no control over, the likelihood of coming up with any of those solutions that might help all of us is zero. If instead we focus on the things that we really feel called to do, the cause that is ours, that aligns with these talents that we have, then some really exciting things can start to happen. So let's dig into chapter 2. Whatever would this mean? Pay attention to yourself. What am I talking about here? I've met you, and I've had conversations with you. You're really interesting. Just saying. My point being, we all create a wake as we move through our life, right? This series of waves that come out from behind us. So the things that we're thinking, we're feeling, we're saying are impacting those around us. And they're delivering a message to us about where we're going and what's important. So you're absolutely right. What else would this mean? Pay attention to yourself. Why would I be talking about this? Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you do that? It's like, hello? Psst. Hey. How do we do that? Get quiet. Has anybody tried this? Listening to your heart, get quiet. What happens?
My mind just goes like different directions. And I'm going, is that my heart? Is that my mind?
Did anybody know what a border collie is?
A what?
A border collie. Yeah. So it's a sheepdog, black and white. Different. So many people think this is the smartest breed of dog on the planet. I used to have a border collie, and his name was Sam. He made me very uncomfortable because I was quite confident he was very, very much smarter than me. It's like he would fold his arms and say, "You're boring me." But there's nothing quite like a border collie with no sheep, because they have nothing to do. Their mission in life is to herd. I had my nieces and nephews visiting me once, and my border collie was there, and they think they're chasing him, and he's thinking, "You people are so stupid. I have you exactly where I want you to be. You're all in this little herd over here in the corner, and wait, in 3 minutes, I'm going to move you over to the other corner, and you won't even know what happened. People are so stupid." But when the border collie has no sheep, they can become very destructive. So when we try to get quiet often, what happens is, you're quite right, Lucy, that we want to listen to our heart. That's part of what paying attention to yourself means. But often when we try, because in this Western culture we live in, there are so many things assaulting our senses. Commonly, our brain jumps in with all this head talk, all this noise. And I've said this before, I think I might have said it this last week, where when you hear that sound, all that noise in your head, think of it as a duck quacking. Do you remember what you're supposed to say next?
Yeah, we always
Shut the duck up, exactly. So, but getting quiet can be really, really difficult. I shared this with some folks that I was in the process of trying to move in this direction of mindfulness, and as the reading I was doing prior to writing my book, I picked up a book by the Dalai Lama, and it was on mindfulness. I thought, who better to reach out to and consult with and seek wisdom from than the Dalai Flippin' Lama? I would never call him that in person, of course. Well, he'd probably be, well, that's cool, dude, no worries. I did that once and somebody said, that's so 90s. Anyway, so I was really excited about reading about mindfulness. I turned for whatever reason on chapter 6, which really spoke about meditation. Do you want to know what chapter 6 in his book was? There's a beautiful picture of him on the front of the cover, by the way. Do you know what chapter 6 was about? How to position your jaw so you didn't drool when you were meditating.
Wow, that's what I have a meat for.
So, well, good to remember as you get older, if you're finding you're drooling a little bit. Who would even know? If you drool a lot, just grow the beard longer. So I was so disappointed because I thought this was going to be so insightful and so much learning for me that I could really finally get grounded. And he's telling me how to position my jaw so I won't drool. And I'm thinking, how is this going to get me to what's going on in my heart? If I had to get some drool in my sweater or know what my heart was thinking, I'd be okay with the drool on my sweater. So can we talk about that for a minute? So I want to tell you a story. I was in my first residency at Royal Roads University. This was in 2000. So this is the first year of my grad degree. And every week I had a meeting with my faculty advisor, Dr. Gail Gibson. Sadly, she passed away a few years ago. Just an incredible woman. And we met in the basement of the Nixon block. So this is former Royal Roads Military College. Pretty nondescript room, tile floor, wooden chairs. And she started this conversation like she started every week by asking, how are you? Pretty innocuous question, right? If somebody asked you how you are, would you find that really profound?
Depends on the context.
Yeah, but in this context, it's just starting a conversation. So she asked, just starting a conversation, how are you? And I was thinking, what do you think I was preparing to say in answer to that question? Yep. In fact, not even I'm, just fine. Terribly profound conversation so far. So what happened was, now there's a whole backstory to tell you about Royal Roads University, which we don't have time to talk about today, but suffice it to say, among the most profound learning experiences I've ever had in my life have been at Royal Roads University. I went there thinking I was getting a grad degree and then a graduate diploma, and I ended up getting far more than I ever imagined. So as I just started to formulate my answer to how are you, and I opened my mouth with the full intention of having the word fine come out next, what happened was I erupted into uncontrollable sobbing. Like the tears were literally shooting out of my eyes, gushing down my face, and I'm sobbing so hard I can't catch my breath. I don't know if you've ever had an experience like that. You're crying so hard you can't catch your breath. And this went on for 20 minutes. Like I could hardly breathe. And then somewhere around the 15, 16 minute mark, I had no idea what was happening. I said, through sobbing, am I going to be okay? And Gail probably thinking, my God, I just asked you, how are you? Like, what's going on? You're going to get another advisor. But what was happening in that moment, what I was becoming intensely aware of, now intensely is an interesting word, but I'd like you to feel its meaning rather than to think its meaning. So if you think of, I don't know if you've experienced sadness in your life, but I want you to just imagine or maybe remember what that was like. And I want you to feel that for just a second and then multiply that by 100. And that's what I was experiencing in that moment. So what was happening as I was starting to glue some thoughts together, I had become aware in that moment, in what was really the blink of an eye. It didn't take any longer than that. I'd become aware of every second in my life that I'd wasted up to and including that moment. So at that time, 2000, I would have been in my 40s, had a whole lot of living behind me, and discovering in that for the first time, all this time that I'd wasted, and at the same moment realizing I can never have this time back. There's nothing I can do to get that back. It's impossible to get a do-over. And the weight of that realization was absolutely crushing. And I couldn't control the emotional response. So as I write about this in my book, I talk about the thoughts that then started to follow. So I remember, early in my married life when I would come home from the end of the working day, and my wife would make dinner, and then I'd go into the family room and turn on the television, and I would sit there for the rest of the night. And I would tell myself and her that I just wanted to chill. It had been that kind of day, and I just wanted to get away from the efforts and thoughts of the day and just relax. Well, you might recognize it if it had been alcohol or cocaine or heroin or who knows what else. But all I was doing was distracting myself. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you're watching television, you can't be thinking about something else. Right? So it was my drug of choice, TV. And I had been doing that for so long, by the time I finally got to Royal Roads University and that question was asked of me, something inside of me, my heart decided to answer the question before my head could even formulate, before my head could say fine, before the F sound even came out of my lips, it jumped out in front and said, not today, not this time. I'm taking this question. So that was so profound because when I started to work on this book, I realized that this is content that lives within all of us. That every day we live, we are collecting these feelings, these thoughts, this awareness. And most often, because our culture is what it is, it doesn't get any attention. It doesn't get listened to. It's like the child that is ours, that is never loved, is never attended to, is never cared for. And for me, it got to the point where it simply wouldn't accept that any longer. It just said, this is crap, and you're going to stop. You're going to listen to me now. I'm going to knock you on your ass in ways you can't even imagine. And if you've ever heard the term nervous breakdown, I was thinking, this must be what that is. And I thought, they're going to put me in a rubber truck and send me back to Calgary. So as I'm writing my book, I'm thinking of this story because, well, what did all that mean? Why was I feeling that so intensely? And I can promise you, the head just was like gobsmacked. Like my head had no idea what to do. It was so kicked off its game. That duck couldn't quack if it wanted to. Forgot it was a duck. had no voice whatsoever. My head, for the first time in my entire life, before or since, was completely, absolutely silent. It had nothing to say. Because I think, and through this, my head discovered that I'm the part of this guy that caused you to be sitting in front of the television for all that length of time. You and I together made that decision and wasted all of that life. I mean, you total up the hours, probably 5 hours a night, maybe longer on weekends, for more than 20 years. That is a massive amount of time. Can you imagine what you would do with that today? All that extra time, if you knew what your purpose was? If you knew your purpose, would you be doing that? Yeah. So last week, and in almost every talk, I ask folks and I invite them to think about, why did you come here? So the folks that are here for the first time. Last week, I asked everybody, why did you come? Often what happens is I register for an event and then I attend. So that's why I'm here. And I invite people that come to events that I'm hosting to think about and consider the possibility that, notwithstanding the fact I invested some time and energy, and Jennifer and Lisa from Candy Consulting invested a lot of time and energy to create this and let this happen, and our hosts put us up. I'm inviting you to consider the possibility, in fact, the probability that there's another reason why you're here, and you and I don't know what it is yet. It could be the person that's sitting next to you, or the person that's sitting someplace else in the room that you haven't talked to, and if I don't push you to, you probably won't talk to. It might be something that someone says in this conversation that we're having today, or in a subsequent conversation, and it won't hit you, it won't resonate with you, it won't feel like it's stuck until at some point in the future, and we don't know when that's going to be, and we don't know where that's going to be, and we don't know how that's going to impact you. Pay attention to yourself. When you're speaking, this happens to me all the time with clients, that we're having a conversation, and most conversations are a tennis match. You say something, send the ball over to me. I respond, send the ball back over to you. You respond, send the ball back over to me. That's how conversations flow. And commonly, of course, because I'm so incredibly brilliant, I actually don't have to listen to everything you say. Just a couple of syllables, I already know where you're going, and I'm formulating my response. And sometimes I might even talk right over top of you, because there's really no point wasting time to listen to everything you said, because I already know what you're going to say anyway. You know, Covey said it, we listen with intent to respond, not with intent to understand. So it's interesting, because on this topic in particular, when we introduce it into your consciousness, when we inoculate all of you with this whole concept, and you, by the way, you've been inoculated with this, you've been infected with this concept of purpose. Good luck trying to ignore it now. And you will find often in conversation that some of the things you say have meaning that's far deeper and resonates far stronger with the question of what your purpose happens to be than whatever the conversation happened to be about. Pay attention to yourself. Listen for the very first time, perhaps, to what you're actually saying. Unpack it as you're on your way home today, or on your way back to whatever you're going back to. Think about, what did I say today? And if you didn't say anything, maybe think about, what was that internal voice saying or thinking of saying in response to what I'm saying or someone else in the room. There is wisdom inside that. There are answers to the question you're asking inside that. Listen to yourself. Is this making sense? I invite people all the time to engage in a dialogue, a personal dialogue with themselves, and we talked about this last week. Talked about the concept of journaling. Isn't it interesting, right? So I said, I want you to journal, and the question, so you're sitting down in front of this journal that you've bought, and maybe you spent a lot of money on or not, doesn't matter. And there's this empty page, you have your pen in hand, you're ready to write, because the bald guy said, I got a journal, okay, all right. Honey, don't talk to me now, kids, don't talk. I'm going to journal. Ready? Go. when you're faced with an invitation to do a task, and you really don't know how to approach it, your question is, well, I don't even know what to do. Pushing harder is seldom the right solution. But what I'm saying is, isn't it interesting that, so we think about the prospect of journaling, we bring with that encouragement or that invitation, all the baggage that we've assigned to what journaling means, and maybe what we felt about a Dear Diary that we had when we were younger, much younger perhaps. Or maybe some things we've heard about journaling. Sometimes we bring in a should there. I should journal. How stupid could I be? Can't even journal. What kind of an idiot is that? Journal, for God's sake. Come on, ready? Journal. So I want you to imagine, instead of me saying, I want you to journal, what if I had said to you, over the next week, I want you to have a conversation with your very best friend. So let's say I asked you to do that. Tell me what would have happened. What would have happened?
I would have told her exactly what I was thinking.
Okay.
What I was feeling.
All right, so you would have called up your friend and said, hey.
Hey, how are you doing? And we'd have a conversation.
Okay, Anna, what would have happened? If I said, I didn't mention journaling at all. I said, over the next week, I want you to go and have a conversation with your very best friend. What would you have done? Fascinating, right? So pay attention to yourselves. Pay attention to what you're saying. Because what I asked you to do was talk to your very best friend. Instead of saying your very best friend, I said journal. Journal in the form, it is the communicative form of you. It's you having a conversation with you. You can try and do this. So then you imagine the bathroom doors open a bit, and your husband, wife, son, or daughter walk by, or your dog or cat. You're having a conversation with yourself, and they look in and think, oh, God. What's with you? Hey, Dad, you better come home. Mom's talking to herself in the mirror. So we can't do that. But one of the things that's cool about journaling, by the way, is not something you should do. It's an invitation to engage in a conversation with you. I actually have a shit list. So somebody gave me stationery, printed in red at the top, says shit list. So some people have seen that and they text me and say, so what or who's on your shit list? So if it's good for you and it's helpful and it's cathartic and it's growth and all of those things, it's something that we should do. The one thing we shouldn't do is should ourselves. So don't should you. I'm not going to do something because I should do it. I'm saying that the journaling is something you get to do, not something you have to do. I'm saying that having a conversation with the single most important person in your life, which is, by the way, the person I'm looking at right now, having a way to dialogue with yourself in a meaningful way, which is journaling, is something you get to do, not something you have to do. But the invitation to engage in this practice is to get into more of a communion with you. So to get yourself on the same page, where you don't feel like you're at odds with yourself. You're starting to move in harmony with yourself. And you're starting to come into closer proximity to the things that really matter to you. You're giving what's inside you a voice. Because without this, a journal, whatever's inside you, like Lucy was saying, whatever's in your heart is competing with what's in your head. Your head has a lifetime of practice of distracting you from anything and everything, most especially whatever you're trying to focus on. Whenever you try to focus on something, usually the first thing that happens is your head gets really noisy and busy, making it really difficult to focus. And so sitting in front of a journal and having no idea what to write is fine. To sit there and for however long you want to sit there and write nothing is totally okay. Because if you went and met with your very best friend and you said to her or him, you know, I'm just happy to be here. I don't really feel like talking right now. Would they say, well, what the hell did you come for? Why'd you call me? You're stupid. I hate you. Would they say that? No. Well, then why would you do that to you? I'm not saying you did that to you, right? So don't do that to yourself. It's okay. What I try, so here's a strategy that I try, and I find that it works. Okay, I write this in the journal. Okay, you wanted to talk. I'm listening. And then just sit there. Sit there with an open heart and wait and see what occurs. And nothing may occur. Now, I want you to think about this because sometimes what's happening is, so this entity within you, this energy within you, your heart, I will call it, is like this very best friend of yours that's been ignored for some of us for your whole life. That's what happened to me in this epiphany I shared with you. So for my whole life up to then, it had been ignored. And so I pull out a journal because a bald guy told me to do this, and my heart might say, oh, so now you want to talk. I don't feel like it. You weren't talking to me. You're 40 years old. You didn't ever talk to me once. Now you want to talk? The hell with you. You wait for 40 years. See how you like it. It feels like a friend that hasn't been treated in a way that you would treat a friend. So your inner self may take some time before it says, I don't know if I can trust you. Can I trust you? If I speak to you now, will you listen to me? Will you really listen to me? Will you unpack what I say to you so that you can really make sense of it? Are you prepared to do that? You're really prepared to do that? Because I don't think you are. I think the only reason you're doing this is that bald guy told you to do it. I don't think if you hadn't met that bald guy, you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't be buying me coffee. Prove it. I don't know if this is resonating with you, but this is a journal to reconnect, or a journey to reconnect with yourself. And I'm inviting you to take the first step, because my hunch is this person inside you isn't likely to take the first step. I think this person inside of you has very likely been waiting its whole life for you to say just once, sincerely, you want to talk, I'm listening. So say that and hold the space and see what happens. And then if nothing happens, don't beat yourself up. There's no shoulds involved here. I'm not going to grade you 0, flunked journaling. Go to remedial journal school. So this concept of unpacking things, I think, is relevant because through every experience, I think there's some value in making sure we heard what we thought we heard and that we understood what was actually said. So case in point, every day for years, I come home from work, and very commonly my wife would be sitting in what we affectionately referred to as Bumpa's chair. Right by, so the door would come here. Bumpa's chair is where Michael is sitting. So I walk in the door, and my wife would be sitting there. She's come home from school, and she is doing a download. I've just stepped in. The door hasn't even closed yet, and she's downloading her day to me. And I'm feeling like I walked in the door, and I'm getting attacked by this kung fu master. Roundhouse kicks, and like, whoa, 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 whoa. Sounds like a tough day. And it was interesting over time, what my wife started doing is noticing, and she said, oh, I'm doing it again, I'm sorry. Take your coat off, get comfortable, then I'll tell you about my day. So then I'd hang my coat, go into the bedroom, get out of my work clothes and get into something more comfortable. 10 minutes later, and in those moments, in that ritual of getting out of work clothes and getting into comfortable clothes, I was unpacking my day. I was bringing into awareness, conscious awareness, what's happened today that I want to keep, that I want to come back to and unpack. When I say unpack, meaning there's learning inside that experience, that conversation, and that I want to come back to and unpack further. There's something more for me in there. and then I capture it, hold it, so that I can come back to it later. And then I'm ready to go back out and join the world. Does that make sense? So having this as a practice when you transition from one part of your day to another is useful. As Tony Robbins talks about this concept of no net extra time. And he's talking about the time that it sits between where you are and where you're going to be next. How long will it take you to go to where you're going next?
18 minutes.
Half an hour, 18 minutes? Half an hour? Half an hour? So though that's no net extra time, because when you're in that transition period, you really can't be doing anything else, right? Because maybe you're driving or you're on transit. I mean, you could be looking at your phone because, finding out what's on Facebook is essentially important, critically important. Well, it is if you're going to watch my Be Live interview, then that's crucially important because I'm doing one of those at 1:30. But you can take that time and unpack the experience that you've just left. So what did I hear? What did I feel? What did I say that I want to carry with me and keep with me? Because when you identify things, there's learning in that. That's what I'm talking about, is paying attention to yourself and paying attention to what's going on around you, paying attention to the experience that you're immersed in, because the wisdom you're looking for can be found there. Who's heard about this concept of head talk and heart talk? So can you delineate those for me? I know you're really happy you put your hand up now. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Okay, bingo. So based on what he just said, and more importantly, the way he just said it, was that head talk or heart talk? Yeah, that was head talk. Head talk you can identify because it comes out smooth, usually, nicely prepared. You can almost see the punctuation in the sentences. The right words have been chosen. The thoughts flow pretty handily. Heart talk, by comparison, is quite different. What would heart talk sound like by comparison? Yeah, feelings. Yeah. So this is interesting. Head talk, the head's a good emoter. It's a good orator. Heart, not so much. Sorry, the heart is the emoter, the head is the orator. So the heart, when the heart is speaking, the thoughts are choppy. They don't come out in full thoughts or full sentences. There can be lots of ums and ahs, and there's often expression on your face that's suggesting the meaning behind the words you're using. And because your heart doesn't get a voice very often, it's not very well practiced at standing at the front of the room presenting a heart-based conversation to people. It doesn't get a voice very often. And when we give it a voice, we don't really know what to do with it, because our head is trying to give our heart a voice. And our heart is saying, I don't trust that guy. Sorry. Is this making sense? So the reason I'm suggesting this to you is I want you to start listening for this in the conversations that you're having. Pay attention particularly to those times when you are feeling what you're saying, and notice the difference between when you're feeling what you're saying versus when you're thinking what you're saying. We all right now could have a very intellectual conversation about COVID-19 and the steps that we should take to stem the growth of this virus. Head talk. We might engage in a conversation where we would learn that someone in our family is quarantined because they've been impacted by COVID-19. And we've just gotten off the phone with them, and they're frightened. And their husband is frightened. And their family is frightened. I had that conversation before I got here. Very, very different conversation. And they don't want to hear what CBC has to say about COVID-19. And they don't need me asking them, well, did you wash your hands? Is that why you're sick? Because that'd be helpful. Is this making sense? So I'm inviting you to start paying attention. This week, I want you looking for opportunities and pay attention when your heart is speaking. Because one of the questions in front of you, if you're thinking, I want to try this journaling thing, well, here's a way you'd use it. So you've just said something, you think, I remember what he was saying about that heart talk thing. I think this could be it. So if you're driving, pull the car over, put it in park, hit your four-way flashers, pull out your journal and write it down. Don't think, oh, I'll wait till I get home, because by the time you get home, you're going to try and repeat it in your head. I just had heart talk, just had heart talk, just had heart talk, just had heart talk, just had heart talk. What did I, what? I had what? Should I see my doctor about that? You won't remember, right? So when it comes to you, when it occurs to you, pay attention to it and record it. Because there's something that happens when the thought that comes from here has to go up into here, go through all the nervous system, down the end of your arm, out the end of a pencil or a pen onto a piece of paper. You can't backspace handwriting. You can't spell check handwriting. You can't Control-Alt-Delete handwriting. You write what you write. And there is commonly more thought that goes into writing by hand than typing. So I do think handwritten is better. However, if there's a choice of, if I can't use my iPad, I'm not doing it, then use your iPad. Have a conversation with yourself. It probably is less frightening to people who are watching that because it looks like you're talking to someone on your phone. And interestingly, you are. You don't have to tell anybody it's you. Who's on the phone? Funny you should ask, it's me. Okay, you're scaring me right now. All right, so peripheral senses. So here's a quick exercise. I want you to, 100% of your attention right here on my face. Just look at me and only at me. What do you see?
The bald guy.
That's the one thing you had to remember, right? Thanks a lot. Okay. Oh, thank you. All right, so now I want you to keep looking here, keep looking at my face, but now I want you to ignore my face. Now what do you see? Tell me what you see. Okay, you see the screen behind me? The lights? What else? What do you see? Byron, what are you seeing? Doors. What are you seeing? Way in the back.
Just so much more distracting.
All right. Okay, what are you seeing? People. So I can see the paintings on the wall, the books. I can see Jen in the back. I can see Devin. I can see out the window here without even turning my head. So when I bring my awareness to the things that are in my peripheral view, all kinds of things now come into conscious awareness. Here's the interesting thing. You go through every single waking moment of your life, and your peripheral senses, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, you're taking in tons of information. Most of which you see, but don't notice. Think about it. Think of all the things that cross your view every single waking moment of your life that you see, but don't notice. And packed inside that is so much wisdom. And it's there for the asking. And it contains pieces that form parts of the answers to the questions you came here that caused you to come and participate in a 10-week session on finding your purpose. The answers you're seeking are within you. And they're pointed to by things and people that you experience as you go through your day. So I'm inviting you to invite that into your awareness. I would like over the course of the next week for you to journal, what are you seeing in your peripheral senses that now you're noticing? So the question becomes not just a list of things that I saw, but what are the things you saw that you actually noticed? Does that make sense? So for example, you said, Allison, you said the TV screen. So instead of just saying the TV, okay, so seeing that might have evoked a feeling. And what did you think when you saw the happy face? So there's a whole line of thought that was going on unconscious at the moment she observed that. Well, the same is true for you. You talked about my eyes, and there's meaning even behind that, no pun intended. And then why was that the thing that stood out? We don't ever ask ourselves that question, and yet there's learning and wealth of knowledge inside those things that you see but don't notice. So start noticing what you're seeing. And that's something you can journal on. Okay? And again, this is not something you should do, it's something you get to do. There's a lot of places in the world where if you walked around with a book and started writing in it, that somebody in some form of authority might come up to you and find out what you're writing or take it from you. Well, you don't have to worry about that here. Yet. Fair enough. So homework. Look at head talk. I want you to be aware of head talk and heart talk. Pay especially close attention when you're noticing you're speaking from your heart. So look for the signs of speaking from your heart. I'd like you to think about a vision board. Do you know what a vision board is? Okay, who doesn't know what a vision board is? Okay, take a look at this. This is my vision board. This will give you an example. If you did a Google search for vision board, you would see lots of examples. This is one on the screen. What I'd like you to do is start thinking about vision boards. So in that respect, I would like you to start looking for images that you would like to put on your vision board. The images represent things that you would like to see in your life in the next 2 to 5 years. What are the things you would like to see in your life in the next 2 to 5 years? And so find images that represent that. Now you'll notice in this example that this person's used lots of words, the words are fine. What's most important is that it speaks to you, that it makes sense to you. Because what you're going to end up doing, this vision board that I created sits at my office at home, and it sits right in front of me. I created that about 18 years ago, and I keep it in front of me every day because I never want to lose sight of the things I said were most important in my life in the next 2 to 5 years. I've realized all of those things, but I fear that if I don't keep attention to them, they'll find their way out of my life. So I want to remind myself every day and several times a day, this is why you're doing all this. Don't forget it. Okay? But in addition, in the process of building your own vision board, you're going to come up with a vision that's going to guide you and guide your feet every day. This is the direction I said I want to go. This is where I want to be in 2 to 5 years, and this is what it looks like. Does that make sense? That's your homework. Thanks, everybody.